Hey, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I'm going to work on one of my favorite Japanese reels from the 1970s today. This is the Shakespeare. It's the 2210 single ball bearing reel, mid-size reel, about a 30 size. Can be used in both freshwater and saltwater, inshore, certainly not deep because of the spool capacity, but overall a nice reel. And one of the things you'll notice is that we have screws on both sides of the side plate, and just want to pay attention as you work on this reel which pieces go where. And one of the things you can do in order to ensure your success a little bit later is to take pictures along the way as you remove pieces and parts. And that's what I'm going to start to do. I'll start by removing the handle and the exterior components of this reel so that we can go inside, give it a good cleaning and lubrication. It's running fine. And the fellow that sent this reel in said, I've had this reel for quite some time. He said, I put it on a shelf. I kind of got involved in life and I'm ready to retire, and I'd like to have this reel cleaned up, serviced, and get ready to go fishing again. Well, I'll tell you what, he did a nice job when he put it into storage, because I'm not feeling a lot of dry grease in that. Of course, we'll see inside. And that's what you do see inside typically when you find a reel in storage. And my guess is it's been sitting this way in storage because gravity's probably done its work. We have old grease and it's just kind of sagging as it kind of has been. So it was either laying on its side, or it was laying on the maybe in a pole rod holder or something. Probably on its side, and it's probably come from the other side and dripped forward and accumulated that way. So it was probably stored like this. Well, regardless, we're going to go ahead and clean this reel up. And you need to take both sides of the side plate off in order to do that, because you can't get the axle shaft and the bearing mechanism out without removing this side plate. So you'll see that there's a screw here for the crosswind block, and when we remove all that old grease and the like, it'll become apparent that that's the way you're going to need to go ahead and clean the reel up. All right, so now we'll flip it over to this side, and we're going to take the anti-reverse off. So right now that's clicking. I want to move that to the off position so that it spins forward and backwards. And the reason I do that is if I go to pull the main gear out, I don't want that trapped in there where it's going to shoot a spring. So if you have that engaged, it'll either come back to haunt you when you go to reinstall because you won't be able to match it into the proper position, or it'll knock something out on the way out during disassembly. So always a good practice to take that anti-reverse, move it to the off position for those reels that do have that anti-reverse function. So while I'm doing this, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel and everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. Your efforts truly are appreciated. That's all uniformed services. That's everybody in the medical fields. That's everybody who is working to keep the supply chains full. And certainly for those that are trying to keep us out of harm's way from the pandemic, thank you. All right, well, I did mention that you need to remove that. I put the 3 side plate screws onto my bench here, and I wanted to make sure that they are all the same size. And it wouldn't hurt if you're a little bit concerned about having the side plates go on backwards or whatever, or the screws in the wrong holes. It wouldn't hurt to do just what we're doing here. Just take them, just give them a little bit of a start and let them mount right back into that. That way it'll remind you that that's where those go. Again, pictures will also help to remind you, and I take pictures all the time. I take them in videos, but especially if I'm working on a reel that I'm unfamiliar with, I'm going to want to take some pictures along the way, because well, you never know when your mind's going to fail. All right, we took the screw out. We should be able to move this axle shaft. It's a little tight. I'm wondering if I have the C-clips on here. We shouldn't, but you never know. Just clean up some of that. This is where the old grease does tend to wreak havoc with you. There you go. So I just pulled. It was off camera. I apologize for that. So I'm just kind of scraping off some of the old grease, and this is where you can tell it's been in storage for a while now, because all that grease up there is just dry. And there's nothing really functional about this one too much. This is the click ratchet, and the clicker for when you spool is your drag is going out. So I just want to grab this. I notice that there's a little stickiness here. I'm just going to flood that channel. I'm going to sit this upright just like that. Back to the cleanup then. This will pop out now. So you want to take that out to clean it. You also want to remember what side it belongs on. So putting those case screws in there was a good idea, because now I've got markers that says that the channel for the crosswind block is going to go this way. I'll put that into my parts tray. Now we can go ahead and finish the cleanup here of that old grease. I'm using a cotton swab to kind of mop up the old grease. And these are one of my favorite reels because of the simplicity of them. Shakespeare in the 50s and 60s, well, they bought a company called Langley to enable them to go make spinning reels. Their specialty was bait casting reels. And in the late 50s, I believe it was, they bought Langley, which was making the Langley spin cast and other models. And that gave them the access to the spinning reels, which were becoming popular. And then eventually they did away with the Langley name. I think Surecast maybe was one of them. They did away with those models, and they came up and they started making them under the Shakespeare name. Well, it didn't take long before the Japanese reels in the 70s started to win a good following. Okay, so I switched over to a deep socket so that I can remove this. And if I remember, this has got a reverse thread, so it probably, yep, there you go. It has a reverse thread where clockwise is the way to take this off. Always good to note, and always good to make sure that you're aware of that as you go to remove the pieces and parts. If you find that the rotor nut is not coming off in one direction, don't be overly aggressive with trying to tighten or loosen. Check the other way first. A lot of those do that because they want to keep that rotor nut tightening in the direction that it spins, so that the rotor does not come loose during operation. And you can tell there's a lot of reels that come into my shop that have a very wobbly rotor. And the reason for that is that there's either a set screw missing in the rotor, or it just got loosened because the turning was not in the direction, or the tightening was not in the direction of the spin. All right, there's a trip lever here. We're going to oil that. I'm going to use fishing reel oil. I only recommend that you use fishing reel oils and greases. I'm just going to give it a quick try. We know it was working before. Give it a quick try and just hit the trip lever there. And while I'm at it, I'm going to throw a little bit of oil onto the seams where the bail meets, and I'm also going to oil the line roller, even though it's not a bury. The reason why I don't take the bail off is, well, the bail's functioning. So you don't need to go behind there and remove screws and pull it all off just for the sake of a general tune-up. Now, of course, if the bail wasn't working, well, that's another issue. You want to go ahead and do that. But don't disrupt it if you don't need to. All right, we're going to take the bearing and pinion gear out to complete the service of this side of the reel. Notice where that trip lever is. That trip lever is kind of pointing towards the back handle, and that's where you want to reinstall. There's 3 Phillips head screws that are holding that collar on. And I'm kind of thinking that this is one that you could put it in any one of those positions. And what that's going to do is it's going to affect where you're going to have your bail trip. And if you put it out on the far side, you may hang it up because of where you're going to orient it to open the bail up. Again, you're going to do the same thing. I want to make sure all of those screws are the same. We'll take that collar off now, and we should be able to just kind of gently rock this out. And it says ball bearing, so we should have a ball bearing in there. And here's our here's the assembly. I'll go ahead and pull this up. I'm going to just kind of lay these out. And everything was working fine in here. I guess you could say I was testing the bearings. I'm just going to do the same thing then. I'm going to oil the bearing. I'm going to let it soak in. It's probably been quite some time. Oh, you see the bearings open back. I oil bearings. I don't put grease on them. That's a personal preference. I'm going to just reinstall that. Reinstall this. We'll go inside, clean up the cavity. You can see that there's some dried grease in it. It gave me a little bit of an issue coming in. Let's just go ahead and make sure that that's nice and clean. And one of the things I've been doing lately, I'm going to use my fishing reel grease now, but I've been putting a light coating of grease onto the outside of the bearing where it's going to join the case. That's going to do two things. It's going to keep it from rusting, and it's also going to make it easier on the next guy who does the service on this reel in order to help that bearing slip out rather than a little rustling match like I just had there. All right, we're going to just grease up the bearing, the pinion gear. It seems like there's a lot of the grease inside the case probably came from this. That makes sense. We'll go ahead and reinstall that. And you need to be even pushing this in. You can't rock back and forth on it. And remember what we said about where this collar goes? We picked that point and said that point is kind of headed to the back of the reel in terms of orientation. And then we can go ahead and grab those 3 screws and put those in. So if you like these kinds of videos, if you're enjoying the art of reel repair, maybe as a hobby or as a small business like mine, I would ask you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe, please hit the notification button. That's going to show you all the types of reels that I work on, and you'll either learn about those reels, or maybe you've got a reel that is like the one I'm working on, and you'll be able to service your own reels. It is a do-it-yourself channel. That's the whole idea here, is to show folks how to do the reel repair, and I welcome questions as well. So if you have a question, leave it in the comments section, and I'll be happy to provide you the answers on that. Next up then is to push the main gear out. I've just simply inverted it. And here's what I was saying about that anti-reverse dog. This is your anti-reverse dog. And if you had left that in place, well, you probably wouldn't have much of an issue getting this out. But these are the teeth that dog is going to interact with. And on the way back in, you probably would catch the high point, or you would trap it. And in trapping it, you wouldn't be able to install the main gear properly, and that would cause you problems later on in terms of your ability to crank the reel. Okay, just clean that shaft off and wipe it down. I use the least aggressive methods I can when I try to clean these pieces. Some cases you're going to have some dried grease on there, like there's dried grease in that little port there for the oiling of the reel. So when you drop oil in from that side plate, you'll see the little oil port. It's going to land in there. It's going to create a little bit of a reservoir. It's going to help keep the shaft lubricated. Well, in this case, this one hasn't been lubricated in quite some time. And we're just going to put a light coating of grease. You don't want to put too much on there. What's going to happen if you put too much on there? It's just going to squeeze out and get caught in this cavity here. All right, you should be able to just simply push that back in. That was easy. Give it a spin to make sure that works properly. I'm going to take my cotton swab here and just get the old grease that's channeled out. This is nice and clean, so I've checked the teeth. I've made sure that they're all good uniformity to them. There's no chips or cracks. I didn't feel anything when I tested the reel. So you want to get grease onto that shaft on the other side, and then you want to get grease into the center here after you're done getting grease onto the grooves. That's because that crosswind block that we were talking about is going to ride inside there, and that needs to have some lubrication on it as well. All right, I'm going to grab the crosswind block while I've got my grease brush. And just get a little bit in there. So then we can kind of start the reassembly process. Now, the first thing we want to do is put the rotor back on. There's a kind of a squared side in this, so you want to just make sure that you locate that. There you go. And we had the little button. And I'm pretty sure that that little red washer that I found there probably just kind of got picked up as I was pulling that axle shaft off. I'm certain it doesn't belong on this reel. So I imagine it was probably, I was just cleaning my bench off before I started this project, and I had a spare one of those around. I'm thinking that's where that one came from. What I'm doing right now, I'm trying to get this started. Remember what we said, it was a reverse thread. So set that, and I'm using a deep ratchet here because the lip of the rotor here is way too much. You can't get a box wrench in there and try and take that off. So a ratchet is the best option there. All right, we've got the axle shaft. Gonna clean that up and get a little grease on that. Just going to wipe off the little bit of excess that we had on the bottom here. Okay, light coat of grease on this, so when it passes through that pinion gear, it's only going to rub off if it's not done properly. And then remember what we said, this goes to the side that has the, goes this way, goes to the side that has the screws in the case. Just make sure that you're secure in that piece, and then come on over, line that. You want to line that up with your hole. I'm going to use a punch for this now, just to make sure that I have the hole set properly. Then we can thread that screw through, and that's going to enable us to tie that down. This is where pictures help. It's easy to get confused here about what is the right orientation, and a picture just tells you, oh, that's the way it went. All right, we're tight with that. I'm going to just put a little bit of grease onto the side channels here. I didn't do that before. Remember, that's where it kind of was weeping out of it. Good. Now we can take our main gear and install that side plate after we remove the screws. That was also a marker for us that said that's the side that that plate went on. And this is the only one that's kind of interesting. You got to line your stud up here with your location on that crosswind block. You can do that visually. I just did it there. But look over the back of the side plate to make sure that that's the orientation that you need. And we'll tighten this one down. We'll put the other side case on, and we'll give it a spin. See how we did. We'll check the drags as well. But overall, it's a nice reel. If anything was going on with the drags, I would expect to see probably felt washers in there, and I would expect to see them being very dry because the reel hasn't been used in so long. But otherwise, it's a fine example of a Japanese 70s reel. And I'm sure this is going to last well into retirement. And go fishing, a lot of fish to catch still. Put that piece on here. Give it a spin just to, oh man, is that smooth or what? Wow. And we'll make sure that the anti-reverse works. It does. Put the last side plate on. We'll go up top, service the drags. And this one will be ready to go fishing again. It'll have a second chance out there. So if you're like Mike is the fellow that sent this reel in. If you have a reel that you need serviced and you're not up for doing it yourself, then if you send me an email on my business card that'll follow this presentation, I'll be happy to give you repair information. I do service fishing reels by mail, and I'll be happy to provide you with that information if you desire that. Again, the idea on this channel is to teach you how to do it, but I understand that a lot of folks are a little bit concerned about opening up a family heirloom, if you will. Maybe concerned that they'll break something. I get it completely. And maybe you just don't have the time. Maybe you're anticipating retirement, but you're not there yet. Still got a job to do, right? Well, I've just got to loosen up these side plate screws because this one is not going in quite square. Here we go. Don't force anything in reel repair. If you find that there's something that's just not lining up like that one, don't think that a bigger hammer is the answer. It's not. Just take your time, go back, reset, and go do that. All right, so now we've got the drag adjuster off. We have a small drag series in here. It's held in by a flat C-bar clamp kind of a deal. And let's see if we can't get this out so we can go service the drag. So I'm using that little pick. We've got the clamp is out. It's a C. It's just and it's flat. It's not a rounded bar clamp. Let's go see what we have in here then. I think I'm right with the felt washers. These have got a lot of oil on it from my spraying the pieces down. Yep. So interestingly enough, we have felt washers, and that's exactly what you should be doing with felt washers. You should just be loading it up with the oil. That's going to keep them flexible, keep them from drying out, and provide the best drag for the reel. All right, so you have a drag washer. Then you have the first of the metal washers. That's what's called a keyed washer. It's a rectangular section, and it's round. Next drag washer, and then you have what's called the eared washer. That always goes in the middle of a 6 drag set. That has 2 points on it. That's going to go into the slot like that in the spool. We have the last of those drag washers. I would say this one doesn't show very much evidence of fighting a lot of fish with drag. All right, now we can just simply, I always say simply, and then I round up in trouble, but we can reinstall this clip, and you're good. All right, that takes care of that. Just going to clean up a little bit with this reel. Just going to use a little rod and reel cleaner here. There's just some old kind of film on there. Overall, beautiful reel. And I thank Mike for giving me the opportunity to help him servicing the reel pre-retirement. All right, got that done, nice and clean. Go ahead and reinstall now. And we'll just do a final test on this. The button's got a little layer of dirt there as well. Let's take care of that drag adjuster. Tighten it down. Okay, we're tight. Then you want to back it off. You don't want to press the oils and greases out of those washers there. Set the arm. Wow, that's all you can say to a reel like this. It's just wow. It's a beautiful reel. Operates very smoothly. Appears to hardly have ever been used, but I know he's been using it, and I know he's looking forward to using it, so I'm sure he can't wait to get this one back and give it a second chance. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Again, everybody, please stay safe and stay well. Please stay watching. And if you're a first responder or essential personnel, thank you again for all it is that you're doing to help us through this pandemic. So with that, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.